Hello and welcome to another episode of the Smart Freight Center Academy podcast, where we share interesting and important information and updates about freight decarbonization and the drive towards a zero-emissions logistics industry. My name is Andy Golding. I'm the head of Academy here at Smart Freight Center, or SFC, as you'll hear us call it, and I'm your host for today. Today's episode is about book and claim, specifically how to explain book and claim to customers and colleagues. Our format today is going to be Q&A style, and joining me is Quintin Barnes, Program Manager, Market-Based Measures here at SFC. I have 10 questions that I'll be asking Quintin all about book and claim, and by the end of the episode, we'll have covered the key topics and key points that will help you not only understand book and claim, but also explain it to customers, colleagues, or even curious family members. Let's dive into today's episode. Quintin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here, Andy. This is exciting.
Super, let's dive into question one, a good place to start. Quintin, what is book and claim?
Said so simply. Book and claim is ultimately a chain of custody model. So it's a chain of custody model where characteristics of the materials or products may be tracked separately from the physical material. So it's a way that things are tracked in a system, and book and claim provides particular flexibility, which is why we're talking about it here in this crazy, crazy world of logistics. Can you get nerdy with me just for a second on that?
Love to. Let's get nerdy.
All right, perfect. So understanding it can be a little easier if you take a step back to kind of two other accompanying chains of custody. The first one being kind of the most simple in terms of physical separation. That could be, let's just say, a truck fully dedicated delivering a batch of fuel to a vehicle. Again, physical separation. Then mass balance, which allows for mixing of things in a system. Let's imagine a pipeline or a fuel farm at an airport or something like that. And then you have book and claim, where there is traceability, but it may be physically separated from the fuel and delivered in a distant geography.
Traceability, but potentially physically separated.
Indeed.
With those two things in mind, and with our nerdy moment that we just had, can you explain a bit about how book and claim works?
Sure. And again, using a case might help a little bit. Functionally, we can talk about what this means for fuels or for transportation services, but fuels is a perfect place to start. Means, for example, a low-carbon maritime fuel producer, let's say, would first verify environmental attributes of their fuel according to a standard certification scheme, they're called. Then those attributes and the physical fuel will be tracked and traced, ideally in a registry, which is a system built for this specific purpose. And that fuel provider would essentially book the profile of that fuel so that another carrier could claim it elsewhere. Given we're liberated geographically by this flexible chain of custody, I could deliver that fuel, say, in Amsterdam physically, but someone could be claiming that attributes as if they had physically received it in another location in the world, let's say Cape Town. So with the right dose of third-party certification and system prevention, this is a highly, highly traceable activity and has confidence in its avoidance of risks such as erroneous double counting or other issues.
Super, thank you. So for anybody listening, hearing you explain what book and claim is, something that might come to mind would be carbon offsetting. How is book and claim different from carbon offsetting?
Yeah, great question. And the principal difference in looking more even how it's not something else is what it is. Book and claim is a way and method steeped in the value chain of transportation refueling, steeped in the value chain of two organizations working together to decarbonize transportation. It is an activity and an investment and a procurement style that actually decarbonizes transportation. So that's the most important thing, is you're actually getting at this hard to abate sector. Carbon offsetting is great when, it has the similar or necessary safety measures, growing trees, carbon capture and storage, and many other ways of doing something out of your value chain have important and verifiable environmental impacts and veracity of those claims as well. They're just treated a little bit differently by the normative accounting and reporting world. Groups such as Greenhouse Gas Protocol or the Science-Based Targets Initiative, they have special programs for how an organization can account for and utilize carbon offsets in their system. But again, one of the big differences is it's something that's out of the transportation value chain in the case of an offset. In book and claim, it is using this traceable, robust chain of custody model to describe what you're doing in the value chain.
Thank you. I think that makes it really nice and clear the difference between the two. Book and claim is in the value chain, although it might be physically separated, and carbon offsetting happening outside of the value chain. So with that in mind, so we know what book and claim is. We know how it works. We understand the difference between book and claim and carbon offsetting. Now, why would a company use it? Why would companies book and claim instead of directly switching to decarbonized methods?
That is a great question. And it's even more so than some of the nerdy things out there in the transportation and market-based measures space. It's this trendy term of book and claim makes sometimes people think that they can just jump to that, or they should just jump to that. I think it's first really helpful often to baseline folks that just because book and claim is popular or being talked about, like energy efficiency, just normal measures are still great. Using your physical suppliers, buying a physical e-truck already is great. Managing your demand so you can put your cargo on lower options, such as sending cargo via train versus needing to take a last minute flight. Those are all fabulous measures, and you don't need to enter into quote unquote booking and claiming. Where booking and claiming is absolutely essential is that, as we all know, the transportation world is pretty crazy complex, and it expands the entire world. And right now, companies don't have immediate access to physical fuels to use in their vehicles. A lot of times it's just not available. There may be cost issues. There may be matching issues to me using it in my truck that's carrying your exact goods, for example, if you're the one who's going to pay. And similarly, if you're a cargo owner, you also might ask your suppliers if they're able to use it, and some of them may not be offering it right now. Some of them may not be. Still, unfortunately, some organizations may not be accounting and reporting just for any greenhouse gas emissions these days. So when an organization wants to decarbonize and wants to implement low carbon solutions or have their cargo transported on low carbon services, we need to give them an option today, because transport needs a jumpstart. It is a hard to abate industry, and without a shot in the arm to get it started, we aren't going to be able to send the demand signal that we need to be able to drive ultimately investment in the fuels that we need today and tomorrow.
So would I be correct to say then that companies would use book and claim in addition to switching to greener options where they are available, but they would use book and claim to decarbonize their logistics where immediate solutions may not be available on location or in specific locations? That a fair statement?
Exactly. Exactly. And one of the elements that comes up in the delivery of physical fuels or in the investment in low emission transportation services is, let's say it might, especially it's especially clear in almost the rural urban divide, but it might cost or be cost prohibitive, let's say, for a fuel provider to ensure that low emission fuel is available at every single gas station, let's say in an entire country. That might even hamper the ability for it to be even more available in the transportation industry as a whole. So how can we keep system costs down? Again, here at the beginning, still the beginning of this movement of increasing decarbonizing transport.
I think something that you've just said is maybe something that we don't speak about enough with Book and Claim, with what you've just said about the, let's say, the sustainable fuel provider. If their immediate pressure is to make sure that the fuel is widely available, that's an instant barrier to scale and ramp up. If they can focus on production in a singular location and know that usage can still be beneficial, essentially globally via Book and Claim, what an amazing advantage that would otherwise not be available if immediately off the bat it has to be available throughout a country.
Indeed.
So, okay, based on that, how does Book and Claim help us scale cleaner transport?
Step by step is the short answer. Again, we're encouraging organizations to support and uptake low emission transportation wherever possible. And Book and Claim maybe is, it's another arrow in that quiver. It's another tool on the toolbar. And where organizations can, they should use Book and Claim when they need to, in order to ensure that we're driving demand, that we're showing that you as an organization and your customers want low emission transportation solutions and want low emission transportation services from your providers. You need to show this demand signal ultimately in order to get more of the same thing. The solution providers, and ultimately, we're talking about fuels, we're talking about electric drivetrains, we're talking about maritime sails on vessels. All of them very incredible and cool technologies in their own right, but they also require bankability on the side of these facilities. They require long-term stability, ultimately, for them to be able to come online and be available in mass in the future where we need it, for every vessel around the world, for every carrier who pulls up to an airport, or for every cargo owner who would rather procure a cargo service on a solution than a cargo service run by fossil fuels. So we really do need this in this interim period in order to connect supply and demand and get traction. That traction is necessary for every actor in this space.
Thank you. That makes total sense. So Book and Claim essentially can help us stimulate the market. Sometimes it can help solve immediate problems and stimulate the market in general.
Exactly. Having that organization who says, oh no, I have a barrier, I guess I can't participate, maybe we'll try again next year, isn't an option when country by country sustainable transport isn't hitting its goals that it needs, that organizations and nation states are having trouble hitting their statutory targets, their obligated targets. And these organizations are under a lot of pressure. Book and Claim is a way for it to be very credible, but at the same time, customers want this to be real. The emissions reductions need to be real. And in the end, it also needs to be quote unquote cheap. We know customer wallets are tight, and we know that these organizations are under a lot of pressure to deliver this cost effectively and efficiently at the same time.
So with all that in mind, understanding what it is, how it works, the benefit of book and claim, could you maybe share an example of how book and claim works?
Sure. Yeah. So we talked a little bit about physical fuels before. So sticking to that original fuel example, a relatable scenario that hits every individual who has ever, for example, driven a car is when that airplane pulls up to the proverbial jet fuel gas station and it wants some sustainable aviation fuel. If that fuel isn't physically available at that airport, they are out of luck in a purely physical chain of custody world. Underneath the book and claim chain of custody enabled world, again, using these systems, using these safeguards, having the right dose of third-party auditing and verification along the supply chain, much of which is already in place, that plane can claim the environmental benefits of a volume of fuel that was physically delivered elsewhere. So that plane does physically have fossil fuel in it. No one is deceived by that, and no one is making any dishonest claims along this chain of custody. But they are able to claim the environmental benefits, i.e., the lower emission profile of that fuel that physically did go into another plane in another part of the world. So highly traceable, again, highly impactful. The environment doesn't care where that fuel was ultimately uplifted. And there are fewer emissions in the atmosphere as a result of that procurement. On the services side, it's the same idea that cargo service operator would either essentially request that their provider, which could be, say, that carrier I just described, that per transportation services provider coverage a book and claim offering for their specific cargo service, or that cargo service purchaser could essentially, via a book and claim system, procure the attributes of a cargo service itself. So the attributes of a cargo service are, in essence, the commodity that they are claiming through a book and claim system. And the other organization that would have received the benefit of that service, the other cargo service purchaser, wouldn't be accounting for that low emission transportation service. It would have been booked and it would have been claimed by another cargo owner elsewhere. So that's the way that two different organizations can, both at the physical solution level, kind of the liter of fuel, let's say, or at the cargo service level, i.e., take this package for me around the world, but do it for me on the low emission service.
Quintin, based on what you've just shared, can a company that actually doesn't deal directly with transport still use book and claim?
Yeah, sure. Good question. So again, in this crazy world of logistics, it is very often that an organization that is owning cargo and sending a box somewhere, who knows, might also own trucks, might also own fuels. So there are a lot of situations where these roles are mixed. However, generally speaking, when someone is procuring cargo services, it's because someone else is providing those to them. So they're connected to transport. Their emissions in their inventory are in part due to transport. So they are connected to transport. And correct me if I'm wrong in what you were saying, but that is the essence of the cargo owners, that their primary business is something else other than moving that transport around, moving that vehicle around in the logistics industry. They are a user of the logistics industry, and they still want to procure green logistics. It's then the responsibility of us, the logistics system, and the carriers, the LSPs, the solution providers to make sure that they can deliver that that product, the transported good, cost effectively and on a low carbon method.
Thank you. Thanks for that explanation. What are some common misconceptions about book and claim?
Yeah, I'd say the main misconception or first hiccup point is at some point someone goes kind of, oh man, this is hard. And I totally understand, and there's a certain level of jargon that gets thrown around like with any new thing. But the first step would be that you're probably already doing so many of the steps necessary to book and claim well and to take this flexible market-based approach to emissions. You may already be using ISO 14083, the standard for the logistics industry on emissions accounting and reporting. You may be using a tool already or other, software provider who's GLEC certified. And surely those organizations who are providing you the service are clued into transportation and normative transportation accounting. So the first step is just accounting well. And we've seen that accounting well for your basic level stuff is really going to help when you get to a more complicated procurement, such as a book and claim procurement. The second misconception I would say is that amid some of the jargon, it might seem like some of the providers aren't yet on the same page, that one registry doesn't quite seem like another registry, or that book and claim is treated slightly differently in different parts of the world. It's by no stretch of an imagination figured out 100% yet, but there are initiatives such as the book and claim community, which is an initiative that we were luckily part of getting off the ground. But there is ultimately a lot more alignment in the space right now than there are differences. Publications such as the Principles and Best Practices for Book and Claim and Heavy Transport are an example of that, where 40 practitioners got together and basically wrote down everything that people could all agree on, 11 principles and 30 some odd or 40 some odd best practices. And really that goes to show that the organizations involved in doing this are taking it very seriously, doing so with high integrity, and there is ultimately, again, more alignment about how folks should book and claim their divergence.
Really cool to hear that book and claim is a developing story. We know that, but that it's coming together, that there is so much movement and growth in the space and more adoption of book and claim and of these methodologies to scale decarbonization, because that's ultimately what we want to do. Quintin, last question. We've spoken about what book and claim is. We've spoken about why it matters, all the important things. I'm going to throw a little bit of a left field question at you. How do I explain book and claim to my mom?
I appreciate you putting left field into a baseball reference for my American brain. The left field question is appreciated, and I would explain it to your mom by saying something along the lines of, "We've got this." When you are depending on the logistics industry, you are wanting the end result of your transportation. You're sending me that care package from around the world, and you don't know the exact plane, train, bus, or conveyor belt that got that package to me on the other side of the world. But you do know that you want to use an organization that is environmentally responsible, that delivers this love and care ultimately with a same level of respect for the environment and a low carbon footprint overall. So the logistics industry is using a flexible chain of custody to ensure that each component of that delivery is done on low emission solutions and backed up with verifiable proof and a veritable claim ultimately for you that low emission transportation was conducted in route of this package. Similarly, to you being flexible to the means of delivery of that package and to its final destination, we need to have a flexible system that delivers the sustainable attributes of that entire transaction as well, in order to ensure that there is more of that for the next care package to come.
So for my mom to send me care packages in the most sustainable way, we need flexibility. To scale decarbonization globally at a massive level, we need flexibility. And I think that's maybe one of the big advantages that Book and Claim offers us. That access to scale, access to things we may not have located nearby. And is there anything else that I'm missing in terms of summarizing as a highlight and conclusion the magic of Book and Claim?
I think we did a good job of exploring some of the topics. As long as you and your mom can get it, I think we have a good shot of explaining it to the logistics professionals out there. And ultimately, the last message is join us. Join the Book and Claim community. That it could mean joining our newsletter, bookandclaimcommunity.org, and follow the necessary buttons. Join SFC, join the Academy, sure, but go out there and just talk with your providers, see what sort of flexible options they have. Be transparent to your own providers about what you're procuring, and really just try and hold this new procurement method with high regard and with respect, so that we can do more of it in the future and get connected and more deeply involved in low carbon transportation. And thank you.
I couldn't summarize it better, so I'm going to call it there. Quintin, thank you so much for joining us. That is a wrap of our Book and Claim Q&A episode, and talking about how do we explain Book and Claim to customers, colleagues, and my mom. Thanks, Quintin.
Thank you. Take care.